It is March 13th, 2013 at 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting of the Blackstone-Millville Regional District School Committee to order. If you could stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The only thing on the agenda tonight is the public hearing to review the 2013-2014 fiscal budget. And with that, I would like to hand it over to the Superintendent, Mrs. Shaver-Hood.
I'll tell you what, I'll drive.
Good boy.
This could be a two-person operation.
Good evening. Tonight we would like to explain our FY14 budget, answer any questions which you may have. Our budget process really began in September. When we were building our budget, we looked at what our anticipated revenues would be. We also looked at our mission, our core value, and above all, we wanted to maintain and promote student growth and student achievement. So we were looking at these four factors as we began to build our budget. The budget process, as I said, began in September with the principals looking at requisitions, supplies, materials, how to promote, how to meet the needs of our students. From there, we met in October and November, looking at departments, looking at what materials we had, what we needed to move ahead. In December and January, the principals and directors began meeting with me. We looked at their budget. They defended their budget. We looked at supplies. We looked at materials. And at that point, we started presenting to the school committee. In January, the principals and directors presented their budget to the committee, answered any questions. At that point, the committee began to review the various line items, making adjustments, and it was about this time that we began to get our figures in from the cherry sheet. As we saw what the revenue was coming into the district, we knew that we had a difficult budget year ahead of us. As we built this budget, we knew that we needed to match our revenues to the expenses. Tonight, we're here to discuss the budget, and next week we will be adopting the budget. When we began this process, our goal was to provide a level service budget. We certainly wanted to look at supporting and improving student achievement. We believe that we need to look at being efficient. We need to capture the effectiveness for the reorg, but above all, we know that we need to work with all the available funds that we have. When we began putting this budget together, there were several drivers: our salaries, contract services, special education, transportation, and health care. And unfortunately, when you look at all our budget drivers, that leaves very little in excess for supplies and materials or introducing new programs. Once we had the initial budget developed, we knew at that point we would not be able to offer any new services or programs. We also were looking at our supplies and materials textbooks, workbooks, etc. And with this budget, we know it's going to be very, very difficult to upgrade any of these materials. In the past, we've been able to make some purchases out of the previous year's budget, which would help us in the next fiscal year. Unfortunately, due to some reductions that we made in the budget last year, or this current year, and some staffing increases that we made to support student growth and learning, we are not going to be ending this fiscal year with the amount of money that will help us into FY14. Our first pass at our budget was $24.9 million. Our revenues do not meet $24.9 million. At that point, we began to cut. We cut approximately $1 million, and that was in the lines of staffing, supplies, and materials. We then arrived at the budget figure of $23.9 million. Since that time, we've been working with administrators. We've been working in the committee to look at what can we possibly do to meet our revenue. Presently, we are looking at a budget of $23.2 million. This does not meet the revenue.
So if this sounds familiar, we probably covered a lot of this last night, so I'll give you the, I know Esther's very excited. Fiscal 14 revenue. Okay, now Blackstone, the district gets its revenue from basically three sources. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is known as Chapter 70 aid. You probably hear those words on the radio or on TV. Regional transportation, because we're a regional school district, the Commonwealth has always reimbursed, well, some of our transportation costs. Right now it's about 30%, give or take, probably a little under 30. We also get funding from the two communities based on what is known as a formula to develop net school spending, which the Commonwealth has come up with a formula that basically lays out how much you should be at a minimum spending for the education of the approximately 1,888 children that call Blackstone Millville Regional home. Those are October 1st numbers. We also get money funding from the district itself. We are an entity unto ourselves. We're like a city or town, so therefore we have both positive cash flow and negative cash flow, and we have something called an excess and deficiency account. And what that is, that's established by law, where the school district can keep up to 5% of its operational budget. So in Blackstone Millville's case, that would be approximately $1 million could be held in reserve to offset any costs that are unplanned. We also can use them to lower the community's assessments if appropriate. Not below the net minimum standard, but to pay for any time that the budget is out of balance. We also have a function, you'll notice under both towns, is a minimum contribution and an exclusionary cost. The Commonwealth, in its infinite wisdom in 1993, when it reformed education, it basically said, these items in your budget are considered part of the everyday school operation. Custodial salaries, the heating and the lights, the teachers' salaries, textbooks, materials, and so forth. It does, however, does not include transportation. It also doesn't include any capital expense, like if you decide to go out and buy some equipment like a new lawnmower. That is not covered under net school spending. That's an exclusionary cost. As well as any costs that you may have associated with either debt or also the function of your building, such as if the Girl Scouts come and use the auditorium tonight and there was a cost associated with that, that should not be included in the net school spending. That's exclusionary. So if we look at what the minimums are, and what they do is to establish the minimum, they take a look at the town of Blackstone and Millville, and they establish what they say the town can afford. And they also say, well, okay, well, we know that Blackstone can afford to put $6.091 million to its regional school, and we'll make up the difference in the Chapter 70 number. So if we factored this out, if we added all these numbers together, you would get the net school spending cost, roundabout. The exclusionary costs for Blackstone are $1.1 million. So the total Blackstone commitment this year for the operation of the regional school district is $7.195 million, which is a decrease of $31,000. And that's a whole bunch of reasons for that. Enrollment, as well as the fact that Blackstone is getting close to the number that the state expects them to be contributing for net school spending. Millville, its minimum is $1.8 million, and its exclusionary costs of $448,000. Now, those exclusionary numbers get passed back to the two towns based on how many children are in the school district in Blackstone and in Millville. So our total exclusionary number is somewhere around 1.5 net, and it gets split up between the two towns that way. So Millville's total is $2.269 million, and that's an increase of $87,000 over fiscal 13. The district is able to, has not officially voted, so this is a temporary number of $847,000 that we are going to place against the costs of the operation through an excess and deficiency transfer of about $300,000, as well as $60,000 in Medicaid reimbursements, along with some money from athletic and music fees, and other miscellaneous fees that we've collected, interest earned, and so forth. So it's a little bit higher than it was last year. Last year, we contributed $767 to balance the budget. This year, we're putting $847 in, hopefully, as long as my colleagues go along with that. And then grants. Our federal grants are down. Sequestration, you might have heard it. Well, here's evidence that how it affects local schools. So it's down about $59,000. So if we look at our total revenue, we have about $117,000 less next year than we have this year. So that's our anticipated revenue. And you just heard from the superintendent that our budget's at 23.199 or 23.2 million, approximately $1.45 million short. If you look at this pie chart, you'll see the big green swath is salaries. Obviously, when you need to employ people, a large part of your finances go to salaries. The red in the upper left is insurance, almost $3.3 million for various insurance, mostly health, dental, for staff and retirees and so forth. Transportation is the next slice, approximately $950,000. The lighter blue is the $4.5 million, which is special services, student services, as I like to call it, costs which are for folks on that avail themselves or that have to have other services outside the normal regular education. Is that PC, Paul? Yeah, thank you. So this is not a level services budget. And when we talk about level services, it's going to be higher than level funded, because every year there are raises, there's increases in insurance, there's increases in gas and oil. So we were looking at a level services budget. So in order to achieve a balanced budget, we're 1.4 out, we need to do some of the following. There'll be further reductions in professional and support staff, reduce instructional supplies, so once again, we'll be in a difficult situation there. You can read the rest, increase in student support services, or there'll be a decrease in student support services, and increase in user fees, and that's really the committee needs to decide on that with a vote, but presently we're looking to go to $225 per sport per child from 80. And Mr. Bebo's coming in here now, so he can hear this, and we're going to 160 for the music, right? 160? Yeah, 160. So once again, the committee needs to take a vote on that before it's enacted, but that will help get us some more money into the operation. So, continuing the examination of the budget, we had this discussion last night with many members of the staff. Presently, there's about a 10% hit on the fiscal 14 budget for healthcare, and we're working with the advisor to understand how that can be addressed. So here's the magic number. I'm really kind of disappointed that there isn't a selectman in the House, and well, there is one selectman in the House, and no one from Millville and no finance committee members. So hopefully they'll catch this on TV. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chamberlain. I'm awfully sorry. I thought that was Mitt Romney in the back, and I didn't realize it was you. Awfully sorry. Here I was thrown into the bus and for nothing. So we're discussing there's discussions with the bargaining units underway regarding the financial impacts. We're looking at modifications for the healthcare services and service delivery efficiencies. So this will be a little bit of a different change, and it's a shame there aren't more people here to hear this. So what we want to look at is to investigate truly going to change in the district agreement to facilitate grade level consolidation. We'd like to establish 2 centers, an early childhood center, K-1-2, and an intermediate elementary center, 3-4-5, that would handle children from both towns. So all your first grades, second grades, kindergartens would be under one roof, and likewise 3-4-5. And we think that we can see economies of scale by a number of ways, including, and also we'd like to establish an alternative, or to host an alternative education program that would help offset maybe some of the expenses that we are presently tuitioning out for, and instead of us being a sender, maybe we're a receiver. We do have the space, and I do believe that there are probably a lot of interest from some of the Blackstone Valley towns and districts to pursue that. So like I said, advantages of this migration would be, curriculum alignment, efficient deployment of services instead of, a specialist being in one school for one day, then jumps over to another school for 2 other days and so forth, that they would be pretty much, if they're elementary centered, they'd either be one place or the other. Hopefully achieve class size parity. And what I mean by that is, if we have 30 children in the first grade in Millville, we're probably going to have 2 first grades of 15. If we have, a similar number in Blackstone, because of the way the division is, Blackstone's sizes tend to ride higher. Like if there's 89 kids, we're probably not going to a 5th classroom. But if we put the 2 of them together, maybe with all 6 first grades, balances out with a good class size. So this is all about class size reduction. This is all about trying to improve the services while saving us some money. Okay, we can't afford to be just adding a teacher like we've had to do this as things goes along, and it's really been difficult. Now, we've talked about this in the past where we said, okay, we'll take a few kids from Blackstone and we'll send them to Millville to balance things out. Well, you're not sending my kid. So we went through all that. We got beat twice at the town meeting to try to do that. So now we're coming back with I think, a better thought out plan. The problem is that we had shortened time. Town meetings are very soon. We don't want to rush into this. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So even if we don't go forward with this year, we're going forward with this over the next year or 2. We're hopeful, if there's enough support from the communities, that we can pull this in and do this now. But we know there are a lot of unanswered questions, and we're very much open to hear all of the issues to come forward. And we encourage you to, if you're watching this at home, to call the schools, talk to your principals, talk to your teachers about this plan. We want to pretty much make it symmetrical so that the same services are offered across the district. And we think by concentrating these elementaries in this way, this will help achieve that. Okay, working in unity, that's part of the mission statement. So we haven't asked for an additional contribution, or we haven't gotten an additional contribution since 2009. 2010, Blackstone passed it, Millville defeated it because it needed an override. We've exhausted all our methods there were no more rabbits in the hat, like I said last night. We pretty much exhausted all our revenue. This year, we're much tighter revenue-wise than we were in the past, so we cannot, like, shall we, for the lack of a better term, borrow from Peter to pay Paul, or steal from Peter to pay Paul, which is what we used to do by saying, okay, we're gonna take $65,000 or $85,000 of this fiscal year to pay for supplies for next year. Not going to happen this year. It's not there. We're very lean, very close. We pretty much have, used everything at our disposal to try to mitigate this solution. We're taking a big hit out of E&D with hopes that we can replenish some of that when our books close. But once again, that's very dangerous, because if any type of district-wide issue comes up, that's really our savings account. Just like you at home, hopefully you have a few bucks stuck away if the furnace decides to break or a tree falls in the yard. Presently, right now, the district is operating at just about 1.5% above net school spending. This is not a good thing. When you look across the Commonwealth, the average net school spending is 15% above the minimum statewide. And if you look into some of the analysis, when you look at similar school districts, you'll see some school districts, even right around here, they're at 15 and 20% over net school spending. So if we had this we wouldn't have to have this conversation tonight if we had still gotten a few, not a lot, but just some money in excess of the minimum going forward. So really what we need to do is we need to start working that way. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. We have to put our best foot forward. We need to raise the minimum contribution, or the contribution from the communities, over a period of years to get to a set percentage. We can't tell you what percentage that is. What we have to do is we have to work with the two finance committees, and we want to be treated like some of the other school districts that interface with Blackstone and Millville. All we're asking for is a little bit of parity in those negotiations, because although they service a small percentage of children, we take care of the rest of them. So it's very nice that you spend $22,000 a year to go to Norfolk Aggie, but the kids in Blackstone Millville are only getting about $10,000, and that's with 6 of it being from the state. So just asking them to kind of balance that out. And some of our goals by all this stuff is really, as you can read them, we want to make sure that we're putting out a product that can compete in the 21st century, but not only is going to college, but also has the skills to enter the workforce, regardless of what their socioeconomic background is, or even their intellectual background. We want to make sure that we're doing the right things for the kids. I think that's what we owe it to them. But it all comes down to raising expectations of everyone here, as well as the community and the staff and the children. So that's pretty much where we're going. I don't know if we have any others. Oh, we do. We had some more. Because that's right. I told you I used your word, right? Now, increased student achievement. We had this guy come in to talk to the school committee a few weeks ago. You might know him. He's the principal of the high school, and he used a word I haven't heard in years. And he talked about rigor, academic rigor. That's really essential for where we're going. In order for children to compete in these changing times, whether they're going to college or not, I mean, why don't we have a plan for every kid and where they're going? We've got to reduce dropout rates. We have to drive home the thought process that this is the best bang for the buck. Okay, one of the key information that you might have seen, or I kind of glossed over quickly, We have a negative $277,000 obligation for choice. We have that much more choice going out than coming in. We need to change that philosophy. And I believe it's two bubbles. There's an elementary going out, and there's a secondary going out. We need to find ways in how we're going to bring these people or keep these people here. Okay, because that's money that we're not getting any credit for. Instead, they're going up, whether it's Bellingham, and then Upton, Milford, or what have you. And we really need to start looking at that. There's no reason why we're in this situation. It can't be. And pretty much a lot of this other stuff is just along the same lines, providing opportunity for the children and going forward. Okay. Now, where does it go from here? Next week we adopt a budget. We actually have to send to the two towns a certified budget that will take the deficit and apply it to both towns as additional contribution, and whatever the number gets voted next week. Now, by law, we can't we can't raise that number any higher than what we do on March 20th. So if we send the towns a budget that's out of balance by, say, $1 million, that's what our starting point is to work with. We can't come back in the middle of April and say, oh, wait a minute, we changed our minds, it's really $2 million. It doesn't work that way. We can only go down. So people may get a little nervous when they see that this is so out of balance, but this is kind of typical, and we try to work these numbers back to something manageable. We don't want to put either town out of business, but we also need to provide for the students and the staff in the district. So at that, I think that pretty much wraps it up. We're here for questions, all of us. So, Bud.
Thanks, you guys. Just speak on the user fees just for a second. I understand when we started user fees, we've been able to control them for the last several years, keeping them at one price. Raising them 100%, I think, is a little bit hard to take in any business. So if you tell anybody you're going to go from, 80 to 160, and I'm just using us, I'm sure I could be Tim Johnson saying the same thing right now. To go 100% is quite a bit of a change. If you can, and I do appreciate over the years keeping at the same level funding for all those years, and we finally probably come to a bypass that it may not be possible anymore. But if we maybe have a little bit more of a 3 or 4 year outlook to get to, maybe if you want to get to that point, but to go 100%, I just think is tough. So if you can think through that when we go through the process, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else with any questions?
Last year. So you do last year.
I know when you didn't call me the second time, you knew I saw you.
Yes, I had no idea.
So my only question is additions. Is the athletics and the music figure that you have down here, the 229 and the 108 for music, is that already have the additional fees in there, worked in there? Yes? And is there any other addition? I know this assistant superintendent is added to that. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of?
What's his question?
Bottom line is a $21 million operation. And we have kind of limped along over the last few years with marginal office help, central office help, and in the meantime, we're going to put 3 roofs on. I think it's just practical. We're also looking at restructuring, and I don't think we've talked to anyone about what the restructuring is going to be, but we're going to move some stuff around there to make this person. We'll have set deliverables. Would be definitely an assistant superintendent, but this present superintendent would focus on the bigger picture, and the assistant superintendent would be take on some of those other responsibilities that, you know, are designated from her, because I think we all agree or have all realized that, you know, Ms. Schaefer-Hood is the only leader we have in the central office, and it's just overwhelming at times, and I don't think it's going to get any easier. So we've hemmed and hawed, we've had it in, we've had it out, and I think what we've... So she can fill you in.
During the past 4 years that I've been in the superintendency, we really have lowered the staff in central office considerably. When I first came in, I was the assistant superintendent. We also had a full-time curriculum person, and we have neither now. We have a half-time curriculum person, we have a half-time technology. We did have a full-time technology director as well. So we certainly have cut over the years. When you look at districts our size, there are usually 2 people at least in central office, whether it be a business manager, a director of curriculum, a director of technology, and many have assistant superintendents. So what we found is there are many balls up in the air, and what we do is we watch them drop every so often. We certainly do need to bring some additional personnel into central office. I think it's a fairly reasonable request to add an assistant superintendent. It's very difficult to look at oversight to make sure that we're operating efficiently and effectively with just one person. So that's our plan to move forward. Other questions? Yes.
I just had a question on what would be the cost savings to changing the regional agreement? Is there a cost savings to doing that, and would that be offset by the transportation cost of now busing children to different towns?
We do believe that there will be a savings. We believe there will be approximately a $300,000 savings, perhaps just a little bit more. As far as the transportation, we're going to be having a conversation with Mr. Tellstone and his company about what the cost would be. However, when we look at the preliminary numbers, we do believe that there is a savings. But more importantly, when we look at this, we believe that it's the best for our students. It brings into alignment the curriculum. It also looks at class sizes and addresses class size issues. We also are more efficient in staffing. And so while there is a fiscal savings, we also think that the savings and the benefits for our children outweigh and make this a very viable option.
Any more questions?
Oh, good, thanks. What we really need is for you to share this information with your neighbors, your colleagues. We welcome any questions. Please feel free to call us, email us. It's very important that we get your feedback as we start to move forward into the committee finalizing the budget. I also would like to share with you that this has been a very difficult budget process. Nobody likes to reduce services. Nobody likes to say, I'm sorry, you don't have a job. In the present budget that you see before you, we've reduced approximately 12 people. And that's existing positions. We've also eliminated several positions that we would have liked to have added. We cannot. If we're unable to come to the budget number through the health care, through some other means, we will be reducing approximately 18 educators and approximately 10 support staff to bring us into the level budget. Along with that, we'll be eliminating any supplies, any materials that we presently have left. This budget will leave very, very little left for our students. And so for that, we ask for your help. We ask for your consideration in the budget proposal that we will be bringing for you. And quite honestly, we do need your help with this budget. And again, if there are any questions, please, we'd be very happy to answer them. And we look forward to next Wednesday night.
Please keep in mind that our next meeting is on the 20th, which is a Wednesday, different than our Thursday meetings. We will be at that time making our, adopting the budget. I know this is a lot to process, so if you kind of go home or if you're watching at home and you come up with questions, you can either call the school, call the superintendent, or you can come to our next meeting if you want to express some concerns or ask some questions at that time before we officially adopt the budget. So, with no other questions, I'd like to, I'm looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Tringali. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Greenstein. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing is now closed. I'm not sure if you want to continue any of Having concluded the agenda, we will at this time close the, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Robinson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Greenstein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is a vote, and the meeting has been adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.